I never imagined that one day my life would be entangled in such drama, let alone one involving my own family. I am 29 years old, and I have been married to Harry for 7 wonderful years. Harry is my rock, my partner, and the love of my life. Our marriage has been a source of immense joy, except for one glaring issue: his sister, Kayla. At first, I believed Kayla was a bright spot in Harry's life, a loving sister who would become my friend. But as time revealed her true nature, I realized that Kayla was anything but supportive. She was manipulative, jealous, and brought negativity wherever she went. I remember when I first met Harry. He spoke fondly of his sister, painting her as a close confidant who had been there for him during his teenage years. Their bond seemed strong, and at that time, I thought it was sweet. I had lost my own brother in a tragic accident years before, so the idea of having a sister-in-law felt like gaining a new sibling. Kayla was warm when we first met. She laughed at my jokes, asked questions about my background, and for a moment, I truly thought we'd become close. But that was before Harry and I grew more serious. As our relationship progressed, Kayla's behavior began to change. Subtle at first, then more overt. She would make casual comments about Harry's ex-girlfriends, bringing up their successes or suggesting that they still reached out to him from time to time. Harry, to his credit, always brushed it off, assuring me it was just her way of stirring the pot. Yet, as time went on, these remarks felt like more than harmless jabs. They felt like barbs aimed directly at me. Despite her remarks, I tried to stay on good terms with Kayla. I made efforts to include her in my plans and treated her with kindness, even when she tested my patience. But the turning point came when Harry proposed. The night Harry asked me to marry him was one of the happiest moments of my life. We celebrated privately, basking in the excitement of our future together. The next day, we shared the news with our families. His parents were thrilled, embracing me warmly and welcoming me into the family with open arms. Kayla, however, was different. She sat silently, her smile forced, eyes shadowed with something I couldn't quite place. Later that night, Harry received a call from her. She was crying, accusing him of leaving her out of an important part of his life and demanding to know why she hadn't been the first to hear about the engagement. Harry's explanation that we wanted to share the news with everyone at the same time did little to appease her. That was when the real trouble began. Kayla's passive-aggressive behavior escalated after our engagement. She became increasingly critical of every aspect of the wedding planning. If I picked a color scheme, she would roll her eyes and comment that it looked tacky or unoriginal. If I chose a dress, she would whisper to Harry that she could find a better one at half the price. It got to the point where attending events with her became an emotional burden. One afternoon, while discussing floral arrangements with Harry's mother, Kayla overheard and scoffed. "Is that really what you're going with? No wonder you didn't ask for my input. You know I'd have better taste." Her words stung. It was like she enjoyed undermining me in subtle but cutting ways. Finally, I snapped. I told her that if she couldn't be supportive, she didn't have to be a part of the wedding at all. Kayla's face went pale, her eyes wide with shock. I don't think she expected me to stand up for myself. The room fell silent until Harry walked in, sensing the tension. He sided with me, telling Kayla that unless she could respect me, she was not welcome at the wedding. Begrudgingly, she sent a terse apology, which I didn't bother to respond to. I was exhausted by her drama, and my wedding day was supposed to be about love and joy, not her theatrics. When the wedding day arrived, I naively thought the worst was behind us. Harry and I had planned a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by loved ones, in hues of soft pinks and creams. It was everything I had dreamed of. But as I walked down the aisle, my heart sank. There, in the front row, was Kayla, dressed in a floor-length black gown with a dramatic veil, as if she were mourning. The audacity left me speechless. The ceremony proceeded despite the weight of Kayla's dark presence. Harry glanced at me, his eyes mirroring my disbelief. But I steeled myself, determined not to let her ruin what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. After the ceremony, during the reception, Kayla's behavior escalated. She made a point of telling everyone within earshot that she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. Her theatrics were drawing attention, whispers buzzing around the room like flies. Harry, sensing my growing discomfort, pulled her aside. Their conversation started quietly but quickly grew heated. I watched from a distance as his face turned red with anger. When they returned, Harry announced that Kayla had been asked to leave. The awkwardness that followed was palpable, but it was better than having her continue to cast a shadow over the event. After the wedding, I avoided Kayla as much as possible. I thought that by maintaining distance, the tension would ease. It didn't. Instead, she found new ways to insert herself into our lives. The arrival of our first child, Nate, brought a brief moment of peace. Harry and I were ecstatic, and even Kayla seemed genuinely happy for us, at first. But her visits quickly turned intrusive. She would show up unannounced, criticizing the way I was raising Nate or making passive-aggressive comments about how lucky I was that Harry had settled for me. 2 years passed, and Kayla's life began to unravel. She suffered a miscarriage, a devastating event that even I, despite my frustration with her, felt deeply for. Harry and I reached out, inviting her over to spend time with Nate, hoping that being around family might soothe her pain. For a while, it seemed to work. She softened, becoming a doting aunt. I let my guard down, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point. But Kayla's old habits resurfaced. She would gossip about me to Harry's parents, concocting stories to paint herself as the victim and me as the villain. It became clear that she hadn't changed. She had just found a new angle. Her behavior reached its peak when she and her then-boyfriend, Jamie, got married. She chose not to invite Harry and me, citing fears that I would upstage her wedding. It was absurd, but we decided not to fight it. Harry's parents, however, were appalled. They withdrew their financial support for the wedding, and when Kayla begged for forgiveness, it was more out of desperation than genuine remorse. Despite everything, we attended her wedding. It wasn't long before she was back on our doorstep, lamenting her failing marriage and blaming Jamie for their struggles. Harry and I let her stay with us for a few days, but it was like hosting a storm. She scrutinized my routines, hinting that my early morning gym sessions and change of clothes were evidence of an affair. I laughed it off at first, dismissing it as her typical nonsense. But when she started suggesting that Nate might not even be Harry's son, it was too much. The breaking point came during a lunch at Harry's parents' house. Kayla, emboldened by her grievances, made a snide comment about prenups and how Harry should be prepared for betrayal. When she insinuated that Nate didn't look like his father, Harry snapped. His voice, usually so measured, was cold and cutting as he told her that this was why she didn't deserve to be a mother. His words cut through the room like a knife, leaving Kayla stunned into silence. Jamie sat beside her, motionless, a man who had long since given up defending her. After that day, Harry and I decided to cut ties. It was clear that Kayla's presence was toxic, and we needed to protect our family. Months passed without contact, and life became peaceful again. I focused on my work, Harry thrived in his career, and Nate grew up surrounded by love and laughter. It was during this time that I discovered I was pregnant again, a joyous surprise that we chose to keep to ourselves for a while. When Harry's birthday approached, his parents planned a celebration. We decided it was the perfect moment to share our news. Surrounded by friends and family, Harry's heartfelt speech about our love made me tear up. When we announced the pregnancy, the room erupted in cheers. My mother hugged me tightly, and Harry's parents beamed with pride. But out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Kayla. She stood frozen, her smile strained, eyes burning with something dark. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off, refusing to let her ruin this moment. As lunch was served, I noticed Kayla approaching with a plate of food. Her smile was unnaturally wide as she handed it to me, loudly proclaiming that she wanted to make amends. Something in her tone felt off, but with so many eyes on us, I accepted it to avoid a scene. As I was about to eat, Jamie approached and asked if he could have my plate since it looked better than his. I handed it over without a second thought, grateful for the chance to pick my own food. Moments later, chaos erupted. Jamie clutched his throat, gasping for air, before collapsing to the floor. Panic spread through the party as someone called for an ambulance. I stood there, paralyzed by the realization that the plate was meant for me. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits and police inquiries. Jamie survived, but the test results showed he had been poisoned. When Harry's parents reviewed their security footage, the truth became undeniable. Kayla had tampered with the food. The revelation was a dagger to the heart of the family. She admitted everything, her face a twisted mask of regret and defiance. Kayla was arrested and charged with multiple offenses. Jamie, finally free from her manipulative grasp, filed for divorce. Harry and I worked hard to move past the trauma, focusing on the joy our growing family brought us. Our daughter's arrival was like a sunrise after a long night, filling our lives with light and hope. Kayla's actions left scars, but they also reinforced the bond between Harry and me. We learned the importance of standing together, even when faced with betrayal. And though her shadow still loomed in the background, our family was stronger than ever.